I've actually come across an organization recently that has used AI in the most negligent way possible, where they've actually put private data in like public networks, and it was a whole disaster. So,
Oh my gosh.
in my opinion, it has created a lot more problems than solved it.
Everybody talks about hacking, red teaming, penetration testing, but here's the truth. Most cybersecurity jobs aren't that. The part of cybersecurity that could make or break a company isn't flashy at all. It's something called GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. Most people actually ignore it. So that's why today I'm sitting down with the Unix guy, one of the best voices out there demystifying cybersecurity careers. We're going to talk about the future of the industry, why GRC just might be the most overlooked pathway into cybersecurity, and what it actually takes to succeed in this field. So, if you've been struggling to figure out where you even fit into tech, this conversation might open up a door you didn't know existed. With that said, let's roll into this week's episode. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dakota. It's good to be back.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you've been on the channel before, and it's always great. You always have such great insight into what's going on.
My absolute pleasure. Yeah, of course.
Do you mind taking a few seconds for maybe the people who didn't see our last episode or just who haven't met you yet to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Abed. On the internet, it's Unix guy. So I've been in the cybersecurity industry since the early 2000s now. And worked in so many domains in cybersecurity. Started with like Unix and system security, then had a stint in network security, data loss, incident response. And finally, I found myself in cybersecurity consulting. With a focus on strategy, management, GRC now, which is the new thing, governance, risk, and compliance, and honestly, everything in between. So I help companies build team, do recruitments, and sometimes I also do secondments where I'll go and work in a company for like a few months to help them out with a certain problem. And I've got a YouTube channel as well. If you type Unix guy on any search platform, you'll come across it.
Awesome. Diving right on in, you've been in the space for a while, like you mentioned, and you've seen a lot of changes already. Now, I feel like every year there's some sort of new buzzword or some shift that gets everyone attention, whether it's AI, cloud, or regulations catching up. From where you're sitting now, what do you think is actually changing the most in cybersecurity right now?
Yeah, like I love what you said. Every year there is a new fad, there is a new thing. This has absolutely been my experience. In fact, like since the late 90s, it's been like that. There was the dot-com bubble where everything was supposed to go on the internet, but then the internet apparently was a fad and companies closed down.
Day before the dot-com bubble burst.
To here we are today, we've got AI. And actually, if you like go backwards just a few years before that, we had automation, we had machine learning, and I remember like close to 2010 mark, we had like the cloud where people thought, it's just the end of IT and, the cloud will do everything for you.
The cloud?
Woo! So it's exactly what you said. It is the new thing, the new buzzword. And today it is AI. If you go to any cybersecurity conference, you will hear about AI. Vendors are always sending me messages, wanting me to tell me about their latest and greatest AI. Now, what I think nothing actually has changed in a way. We kind of are still in the same sort of boat. It's just another tool. It's just another way of doing things. I don't believe, for cybersecurity at least, that it's the fundamental change that it's marketed out to be. I think it's just the natural progression of technology as far as AI is concerned. Now, as the cybersecurity industry is concerned, I think it is still very much a growing industry. And I just compare it to 2 years ago or even 5 years ago. The cybersecurity industry itself is absolutely booming. More and more organizations are recruiting and building cybersecurity capability. It's no longer a luxury reserved for like big organizations. Now we see small to medium-sized businesses are in fact forced to have a cybersecurity capability. So as far as the industry is concerned, it's definitely growing. Now, as far as AI and what AI is doing and all of that, I think organizations in general are just finding ways to deal with AI, to utilize AI whilst being safe. So that's like a brief summary of where I see the cybersecurity industry is heading. It's definitely more mature at this point, more mature than before. It doesn't mean that it's mature enough. So yeah, we still see the same problems. I still see organizations that have outdated operating systems or organizations that struggle with their detection and response capabilities. So I don't see us being so mature that, AI is coming and solving all the problems. I think it's more of the same, but it's slightly heading towards the right direction.
You bring up a good point. I think just like a few years before, when cloud was the big thing and everyone was just trying to cram like cloud this, cloud that, we're seeing that now with AI. And while they're throwing AI and trying to solve these big deal problems, some of the little stuff that can't be solved by AI yet, they're just neglecting it still. It's still causing issues in people's networks and, security protocols and things that, AI is just not capable of solving yet they're trying to do this big thing with AI. Do you kind of agree with that?
100%. That's exactly what's happening now. So it's like the loudest voices are usually either salespeople. So you've got sales representative from vendors, they're trying to sell you something. But also the loudest voices in the industry is usually gullible individuals or individuals with not much experience. And they think, all right, let's just slap AI on this problem and see what happens. That's actually creating more problems than solving it. Like you said, we still actually have pretty much the same problem. Malware is still malware. Vulnerabilities are still vulnerabilities. We still have data scattered around the network that needs protection. We still need good governance. We still struggle with detection and response. We're not at a point where, the AI is just going to detect and respond to your attacks. In fact, it's gotten slightly more complicated now. I've actually come across an organization recently that has used AI in the most negligent way possible, where they've actually put private data in like public networks, and it was a whole disaster. So,
oh my gosh,
in my opinion, it has created a lot more problems than solved it. I've also seen small organizations, unfortunately, buy tools that claim to be AI powered, but that didn't provide any value to the organization. So we've seen a lot of that. I see a lot of false alerts and noise generated for security operations center teams where they're getting so many junk alerts because it was generated by the latest and greatest AI. So that's actually the tactical things that are happening. On the strategic level, we're still having the same conversations. I still meet with decision makers who are struggling to build good cybersecurity teams, who are still struggling to budget, who still struggling to meet regulatory requirements. So it's pretty much the same conversations that I've been having, except now we have this new annoying thing that we need to take into consideration.
I see how that gets really frustrating after a while. And I mean, I definitely see it. I'm a networking guy at heart. And this year I went to Cisco Live, which is one of the biggest networking conferences out there. And just the amount of AI that people were trying to plug in, to every tool out there was just crazy. And it's like, it got to the point of like, why are we trying to put AI into these tools? It just is not adding anything to the value of it. It's almost making the product worse. And, it gets really frustrating sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. Like you've actually hit the nail on the head. Is the AI that you adding any value to what the tool does? And if the answer is no, then you should never have it. It's just another thing that we need to worry about. And I think it's just a competition between vendors. And we're like, well, all of my competitors are using AI. Let's just slap AI and see. And the way they do it, executives like, well, we've added this AI thing and maybe we made 5% more profit. It must be good. But long term, not really. Like you lose trust with your customers. They lose confidence in your offering. I think that's from a vendor perspective. But then again, from executive like cybersecurity, CISOs like Chief Information Security Officer, they're also struggling with this because they go to the board of directors and the first question they get asked is, are you using AI in cybersecurity offering? And sometimes the answer is, well, I actually need more funding to upgrade my firewalls, or I need more funding to have a better anti-malware tool. The AI is not my priority, but it's a difficult conversation. But yeah, that's the world we live in.
When people talk about cybersecurity jobs, the first thing that comes up is always red team, the sexy jobs, the penetration testing, the ethical hacking, the flashing stuff. But we had mentioned in the beginning of the episode that GRC is just as important, if not more, for the bigger picture of cybersecurity. Why do you think this shift is happening? Or is this like something that's been happening for years and just no one's been talking about it?
Yeah, look, really fair point. And like, I totally understand the appeal of ethical hacking. If you talked to me when I was 15 or 20 or 25 and you told me that I needed to do anything that wasn't ethical hacking, I would just run away. I watched movies like Hackers.
Stroke Cola, the soft drink of the elite hacker.
And I was like really following Kevin Mitnick's stories and going on hacking forums, and that's the appeal. That's why I got into the industry, and that's why many young people got into the industry. It's very appealing. It's this idea that you can hack somewhere and you can break into a system and help protect it. The whole idea is really attractive. However, the industry itself has changed, and like I said in the previous two questions, we're kind of a little bit more mature now as an industry. In the early 2000s, we didn't have the title cybersecurity, but you were a systems engineer or a network engineer, and you performed some security tasks. And there was some consulting firms offering information security services, but it wasn't what it is today. Today, cybersecurity is a discipline on its own. It's not a branch of networking or a system. It's an industry on its own. It's quite mature now. With that, our tools have gotten better, our methodology has gotten better, and as a result, something like penetration testing, we simply have more penetration testers and ethical hackers today than we did in, let's say, the last 10 years. Part of it because industry has grew, so there is more demand, and therefore there is more people, but also training and knowledge is so accessible now for ethical hacking. Now, what this has done is that, supply and demand, there's just more supply of ethical hackers. So we saw the salaries drop a little bit. Some people complain that it's such a high skill job, you should be paid the most. That's not true, unfortunately. And, of the organizations that I help as a consultant, none of them hire in-house penetration tester or ethical hacker. And instead, they pay for a third-party organization, and they pay them to do the penetration testing on their behalf. So just the sheer number of jobs of ethical hacking is not as high as some of us would like it to be. Now, when it comes to governance, risk, and compliance, again, it's just another branch of the broad overall cybersecurity. Now, governance, risk, and compliance, believe it or not, it's a relatively new term to cybersecurity. We never called it governance, risk, and compliance. Instead, it was called risk management or cybersecurity strategy or even a compliance program. This, as you said, it is the big picture. It is the conversation that the manager of cybersecurity have with the senior management. It's the conversation that the CIO will have with the CEO. It's the type of conversation is like, okay, why do we need this much money to spend on cybersecurity? So you need to translate that to business people. So you need to explain it in terms of risk management, cyber hackers or malware. This is a threat and there are consequences to that. You need to translate it in terms of impact, in terms of money cost to the organization. So that type of thing is required now. Now, we used to do it in the past, but now we have better processes, we have better methodology, and all of that falls under the umbrella of GRC. So for someone who wants to, let's say, break into cybersecurity or land their first cybersecurity job, if they want to be an ethical hacker, that's fine. They just need to accept that there is simply more jobs that are under GRC. We just need more people to do GRC than we need penetration tester. We also need more people to be SOC analysts and people on the defensive side. So it's just a numbers game, A. But B, GRC also doesn't require that much technical knowledge. It's very accessible to beginners. It's something that you can learn quickly, especially for people, let's say, who've done another career. Like if someone was an accountant or a marketing, your communication skills will be very essential to something like GRC. And of course, you can always improve your technical knowledge as you go. So just to summarize, GRC is important. It's it's the translation of cybersecurity to business people, where you translate technical terms to business people. Every organization needs GRC professionals. Not every organization needs penetration testers. It's something that can and usually gets outsourced. So if you want to break into cybersecurity, I say at least consider having GRC skills and to an extent SOC analyst skills. This will improve your chances of breaking into the industry.
Hey, really quick. So when we're talking GRC, we're really talking about who owns what. How do we reduce risk and whether or not we think we can prove it when things get messy. Early in my career, our network looked like a quilt. One contract for the ISP, another for the Wi-Fi, and someone entirely different for the firewalls. Great until an incident hits. Then it's a bunch of meetings, hands off, and a whole lot of not it. That is why I like what Meter is doing. Instead of stitching together a bunch of different vendors, Meter delivers a full stack networking infrastructure, wired, wireless, and even cellular, in one integrated solution built for performance and scale. Risk-wise, that means fewer vendors, fewer seams, and fewer surprises. Alongside their partners, Meter designs the hardware, writes the firmware, builds the software, manages deployments, and runs support from the first site survey all the way through ongoing operations. That means one standard, one playbook, and one place to point when you need answers. In practice, that covers the whole stack, from ISP procurement, security, routing, switching, wireless, firewall, cellular, power, DNS security, VPN, SD-WAN, and multi-site workflows. So you're not juggling 5 different contracts just to keep the lights on. And it scales from branch offices and warehouses to large campuses and even data centers, which is huge when you're trying to standardize controls across sites. From a governance and risk lens, you get fast, secure, scalable connectivity without the complexity of managing multiple providers or tools. And the stack is designed to give you deep control and visibility, which is exactly what you want when you're documenting how things are configured and who's responsible. If you're the person that gets the call when the internet sneezes and you're the one answering, how do we mitigate that risk question later, this is worth a look. Thanks to Meter for sponsoring this episode. Go to meter.com/IT career to book a demo now. That is meter.com/IT career to book your demo. Now, back to this week's episode. Like I mentioned, it's kind of like the path less traveled. It's not in the limelight. You don't see billboards along the highway saying, become a GRC analyst. You see people like become a penetration tester, hack for a living. It's not the sexy path, but the amount of jobs available and the amount of organizations hiring people in GRC is way greater, like you mentioned, than, penetration testers. I remember back in high school, we had one of those career days and they're like, oh, what do you want to be? And, they're telling you, everyone wants to be a radio DJ, but you can never get a job as a radio DJ. It's just like that with penetration testing. I feel is like everyone wants to be a penetration tester, but there's only so many organizations hiring penetration testers, where there's so many more organizations hiring GRC analysts, people working in the GRC field. And one thing I think is true, though, is a lot of people are intimidated by the acronym governance, risk, and compliance. They don't quite understand what it is. And you kind of explained it a little bit, but for the people who still don't know what GRC actually is and what the day-to-day job looks like, do you mind going into some details here, like helping shine some light on this, this area of the field?
This is an issue we're having, and you actually touched on it when you said, there is big advertisements for ethical hacking. Actually, I'll give you an example. If I create a YouTube video and I put Kali Linux hacking tutorial and I put a stupid face, that video will get a lot of views, right? Just because the marketing power of something like Kali Linux and offensive security and, EC Council, they pushed the narrative that, the ethical hacker is like a dangerous job and you'll do it. Whereas GRC, A, it wasn't called GRC a few years ago, so we had different names and different things. And B, GRC, or governance, risk, and compliance, is actually not just one job. It's a broad umbrella to a number of jobs. And, we can summarize them, but it really is a broad set of jobs. So we can say, let's say, for example, we've got the GRC, we've got the R, which is the risk analysis. So you can perform cybersecurity risk management or risk analysis. And even within that, there is line 1 risk, there is line 2 risk, there is internal audit. All of this is considered GRC. I even worked with organizations where the person performing this task is not even in the cybersecurity team. They are in the enterprise risk management team, and they work hand in hand with the cybersecurity team. That is very much a GRC role. It's 100% non-technical cybersecurity role. Just to clarify, when I say technical, I mean you're the person configuring the firewall, installing the firewall. Non-technical in this context means that you're someone who knows what a firewall does, who have an understanding of the technology, but you're not the person, connecting the cables and configuring the tool, right? So that's as far as risk management is concerned. But then we have, compliance programs. So organizations, in order for them to be in business, they need to comply with certain standards. For example, if you are a financial institution, you're storing credit card numbers, then we have a standard called PCI DSS. Or if you're a healthcare organization in the US, there is HIPAA. So these are standards that basically tell the company, okay, you want to deal with financial data or health data, you need to have a minimum level of cybersecurity controls. Now that falls under a compliance program. These type of jobs falls under GRC, and that's again not one person. You'll have the person running the program, you'll have the person conducting the meeting or doing documentations or even performing controls testing. So broad area. And then we've got governance and management, like a job like Chief Information Security Officer, which is like the top job in cybersecurity. That is not a hacker. He is someone who's doing GRC. He's managing a team, he's creating a strategy, he's explaining the risks to the board of directors or, the investors. So that is very much a GRC job. They don't write the code, but they present the risks. That's also another GRC job. And then we have consulting, which is what I do, where, I help organizations with their, long-term plans or all of these things. I understand the technology, but I don't do the hacking. I can understand the penetration testing report, but I'm not the one who performs the penetration tester. So all of these jobs fall under the umbrella of GRC. And believe it or not, there is actually a lot more. Another example will be, third-party risk management, where you assess the various suppliers and you create reports, or, security education and awareness, where you train users and, do phishing simulation. That is not a technical job. So again, that could be considered GRC. I hope this summarizes it, but it's just to show you that GRC is really a large number of roles.
Absolutely. The thing is, we don't see job postings saying GRC really. There's not a GRC job role. It's always called something else. And the thing is, GRC is so vast, though, within itself. It's just a section of cybersecurity, and it can be so enormous, actually, depending on the different organizations and what they're actually looking for within GRC. It's really quite an opportunity that, again, I think is not talked about enough as an entry into the field.
You've actually touched on a really important point, which is job titles, right? Like you said, the vast majority of GRC jobs don't even have the word GRC in them. However, this is changing. Like recently, I've seen jobs that says GRC analyst, or it does exist, but as you mentioned, the vast majority of GRC jobs will have a title like information security analyst, or even cybersecurity analyst, or cybersecurity specialist, which doesn't mean anything. But when you look at the tasks, it might be a GRC job, or it might be a SOC analyst job. So it really is about the details of the job. And the other thing that you just mentioned is there isn't good information about GRC, especially for the entry level. And this is a serious problem, because if someone has been an information risk analyst and works in a bank, and they have this siloed job where they see consultants coming in, helping, and they're just documenting stuff. And let's say they've been doing it for 15 years. Technically, they have 15 years of GRC, but practically they haven't seen much. So they have a very narrow view on what GRC is, and therefore, information to beginners tend to be not really accurate. I've seen that. I've also seen individuals who've been, a project coordinator or, a help desk manager, and be like, well, I haven't configured cybersecurity tools, therefore this is GRC. Not exactly. Like, unless you've seen the big picture, unless you've helped many organizations, the experience of GRC can really vary significantly, and therefore you'll see different information. I've even seen individuals who they write Python scripts and they automate certain things for GRC and be like, all right, I'm an engineer. Every GRC professional must do Python. I'm like, well, yes, that you're an automation specialist who happens to work in a GRC team, but your job is really automation. You're not performing risk analysis. You're not having these conversations with management. And, there is strange things like this online. However, slightly changing. I'd like to think GRC Mastery, which is the training that I created, and my YouTube videos have made a difference. And I think the interviews you're conducting as well, they are making a difference. And, as a field, especially with GRC, we're still trying to mature. We're still trying to, I guess, brand ourselves better and just explain it to the outside world.
Absolutely. And, I kind of want to go back to the discussion we were having about AI. Right now, again, it feels like every corner of tech is being disrupted by AI and automation. Some jobs are changing. Some tasks are being replaced. Let's be honest. Some roles are actually becoming more valuable due to AI. How do you see AI impacting GRC specifically in the future? Because like I was saying, AI is here. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. We have AI in everything, whether we like it or not. But I feel like that's got to impact GRC. There's got to be a huge governance. There's a huge risk with AI as well. How do you see it impacting the GRC side of the industry?
Yeah, look, 100%. Like I've seen it used, I guess, well in some instances, and I've seen it used poorly. For example, a big use case that I've been seeing with GRC professionals is they use it to help with creating a report. For example, let's say you're conducting a risk assessment on an application, you have your findings. So it can help you draft certain paragraphs, it can help you draft certain policies. However, if you don't know what a good report looks like, if you don't know what a good policy looks like, it's useless. So it doesn't shortcut experience. If you're someone with existing experience, it can save you some time. But if you're someone who's, mid-level, you're not sure what you're doing, it's a complete disaster. I've had to review many reports, and you could tell it's written by AI, language is weak, and also the findings are inaccurate. So it's a double-edged sword when it comes to report writing. I've seen it even done to help fill out certain forms. Again, it in some instances it actually made us double up the work, so we had to review and go back and fix things. So that was one, and that's, I guess, like strictly GRC professionals using AI. Again, the automation gang, probably, AI could be used to like code that basic automation that they do. It's not really GRC, but that could help in that instance. Now, as far as GRC, it's the one cyber specialization that requires the most, I guess, human interaction. You actually need to assess things. You need to work with stakeholders. You need to present. You need to report. AI cannot do that for you, not yet, at least, and not in the LLMs forms that we have at this moment. However, it will impact some technical aspects. It will impact things, let's say, that's pure just code, and it will save sometimes for someone who's already experienced, who can review what the AI is producing. So that's for GRC. The second thing is in GRC, well, we've got already guidelines coming from ISO around GRC, and I think NIST, don't quote me on that, I need to verify, but we have certain guidelines about AI and, responsible use of AI. So I find myself when I'm doing an assessment on an application, if it utilizes AI, I actually need to ask more questions. So it created more work for us as far as GRC professionals are concerned. Any cybersecurity strategy that I help right now with decision makers, we need to consider AI. We need to see what other teams are planning to use AI for. And as far as my job is concerned, it's definitely more work for me now that AI is present. It's just one more thing I need to worry about, but it hasn't, like I can't replace a person and put the AI on it. It just doesn't work that way, not in the shape and form in it. And some people will be like, well, in 10 years, look, no one knows what will happen in 10 years. We don't know. In fact, there is a recent MIT study that says, the vast majority of code written by AI turned out to be junk and not usable. So I think we're going to see a correction of some sort, like the hype has peaked.
It's all downhill from here.
And I think we are about to, hit back reality and see, there might be good use cases for the autocomplete of AI. It might, brainstorm certain things, but just letting AI do the thing for you, it's not happening, not at the present moment.
I 100% agree. Now, let's be real. When beginners hear the term GRC, the reaction usually is, oh, that's just a paperwork job. That's just doing some checklists. But obviously, there's a lot more to it than just that. What are the real world stakes if GRC isn't done well? I think you kind of touched on them a little bit with the AI conversation, but I kind of want to go deeper into it.
Yeah, look, 100%. I just want to touch on, GRC is just a checklist, and I hear people saying GRC is boring. And look, the truth is, like I said, if you're listening to someone who was a project coordinator or someone who was just sitting in a university or in a bank and they just look at one report, of course, their job is boring and they don't have the perspective to see the big picture. That is not GRC. That's just one portion of GRC. Okay. So like I said, there is a lot of variety and there's also a lot of impact. Now, if you're a junior GRC analyst, of course, you're not going to be someone who's, writing a 10-year strategy for a multinational bank. You're not there yet, but there is a pathway to that. So at the higher levels, you will make a lot of impact. The GRC plan, or let's say a roadmap or a strategy for an organization, that will dictate the investment of the organization moving forward. You will create jobs. Maybe some jobs will be lost. You will restructure teams. That's also things that you do at the higher level. Now, at the mid-tier level, and like you said, the consequences of it not being done, I've seen it a lot. So, for example, there was a big, I think, was it Target? There was a big hack that happened in Target where it was a third-party compromise. I think it was the HVAC system. So that is a classic case of GRC not done well because, you didn't do a proper third-party risk management. You need someone experienced to understand, that supply chain and how to secure that supply chain. There is a lot of things that we find when we do third-party risk management, then we bring it up to the technical teams and then they do an assessment of like, this was a massive gap. We had no idea. So it has a lot of impact. But again, if you're someone who just finished university and not much and you got your first job and you're expected to to change the world, it doesn't work that way. You need some experience, but the impact is definitely there. It's actually a lot more than a lot of the technical roles, believe it or not, because you get to have higher level conversations.
Nice. And, going on that, not everyone's wired the same. Not everyone can be a red teamer or an analyst, but who do you really see like the type of personality, the type of person thriving in a GRC role? Is this the detail-oriented folks or the people that love catching the little things? Who do you think GRC is for?
That's actually a really, really good question. And like it's usually sometimes someone will ask me, I don't know which cybersecurity specialization to choose. Like there's so many. Look, I think the best way to answer this from my experience is I'll tell you which one shouldn't be a GRC professional. If someone comes to me and they tell me, look, I'm obsessed with coding. I code all night. I find my own bug bounty. I do reverse engineering and they're obsessed with that. I tell them, look, GRC is not for you. You're not going to love it. You're going to hate it. Pursue your passion. Like you really well and truly, this is what you want to do. Just do that. And I'm going to be honest, those individuals are the minority. I know a lot of people think that, hacking is their passion. And a quick way to find out if hacking is your passion, tell me, in like a 7 days week, have you spent 40 hours hacking? Like actually writing code and hacking and reverse engineering? Or have you watched a couple of YouTube videos where someone is showing you a technical tutorial, right? That is not hacking. That's just a waste of time. Like you may as well watch someone play video games. It's the same thing. Yeah. You get the dopamine, you think you've learned something, but you haven't learned anything. You just watch someone do something, right? That is not hacking. So to the person who, they show me they already have bug bounties to their name, they're reverse engineering, don't do GRC. For the rest of us, GRC might actually be an excellent choice. Now, when I say GRC, might be an excellent choice, people think that, oh my God, I have to just do risk management. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying get GRC as a skill, because if you get hired to, let's say, small to medium-sized organization, chances are you're not going to be a specialist. They cannot afford to have someone who's just a SOC analyst or who's just a GRC professional. Usually they'll ask you to do, vulnerability assessment and write a report and respond to phishing and perhaps work with a third-party managed service provider. So having GRC skills, in my opinion, is essential. It will also lead you quickly to become a decision maker, a manager at some point, if that's what you want. So I think GRC skills is for everyone. Now, as far as getting a GRC job for beginners, believe it or not, the best job that you can get is the one that you can get. Like, I don't think you get a choice. So if you get hired, as a SOC analyst, be grateful, take the learnings and move on. If you get hired in GRC, likewise. Take the learnings, be grateful, move on. Now, to be strategic with your career, I think it's really important to have 3 things as minimum: GRC knowledge, little bit of SOC analyst knowledge, little bit of cloud knowledge. That's like the bare minimum foundation that I think will set you up for success. It will open so many doors, and yeah, have an open mind. If the job feels a little bit boring, use it to make connections, to study, and to upskill. And you never know.
One thing I think is really interesting, and you've touched on it a little bit, is GRC. You don't necessarily need the hardcore technical background to get in. You know, a lot of jobs in tech, you have to have a foundation in either like networking, or you have to have a foundation in this technology or that technology. But I've seen people come into GRC with business, law, even project management backgrounds, make the jump into cybersecurity through GRC. Do you think this is a realistic path for non-technical people if they're interested in getting, a foothold into this field?
100%. And I think, look, I've seen some hostility online when I say things like, there are jobs that doesn't require technical skills. People don't like to hear that, but this is the truth. Yep. I'm really, really sorry, but the individual who's, doing documentation or policy work, they don't necessarily need to be the expert in these technologies. They can work alongside someone who's the expert, but ultimately someone has to do that work. Someone has to do the documentation. Someone has to do the compliance analysis. Someone has to meet with the supplier and conduct this analysis. It may not be what you like personally, not you, Dakota, but someone who's, an engineer. It might not be, the security engineering that you love, but it's a job. It's valid. And believe it or not, they get paid more than technical roles. A lot of, chief information security officers and stuff, they are not technical people. And sorry, it's not a technical job. A cybersecurity manager or a leader, that is not a technical job. And if it was, it needs a different title. If I was managing a cybersecurity team properly, I'm not going to have time to be hacking and looking at firewalls. Sorry, I need to manage a team. I need to report. I need to present. That is the job. I need to budget. It's a completely different job. And you will be responsible for the entirety of cybersecurity, not just your little tool that you love so much. Like it's a lot bigger than that. And 100% people with project management skills, people with good communication skills. I've seen like nurses and individuals from hospitality make a very successful transition to GRC. And yeah, it doesn't require technical knowledge.
So let's say, the people listening to this right now, they decide, okay, I want to be in GRC. Where should they start? What are the foundational skills? What knowledge do they have? Even what mindset should they have if they're looking to build a career today in GRC?
Yeah, like I really like that question, especially when you said mindset. I think the mindset is just be open-minded and look at things broadly, right? So gain GRC skills, but don't just wait until the GRC jobs come. So let's say, broadly speaking, you have zero technical skills. Usually my recommendation is, if GRC is the goal, grcmastery.com, I actually show you what GRC is, how to perform risk management. I also give you the fundamentals, if you will, like what identity and access management is, what asset management is, all of these things that you will use in, like, let's say, compliance programs, for example, NIST or ISO 27001. So all of these frameworks, which is really a set of controls, I teach you the fundamentals of where these controls came from, how to conduct an assessment, how to analyze a report. I even include reports for you in a practical hands-on lab, so you get to practice what you learned. Now, some people can get a GRC job right away with it. Some will need more. Now, if you're someone who's starting a career in cybersecurity, you should have, think of it as, it's a long-term plan, so you continue learning. My second recommendation usually is something like the Google Cybersecurity Cert. Again, it's a bit broad. It's a nice introduction. It will ease you into cybersecurity. Now, Google Cybersecurity Cert actually gives you 30% discount to something like CompTIA Security Plus. So you can combine it with CompTIA Security Plus. And this way you have 4 certificates. GRC Mastery also gives you ISO 27001 Lead Auditor. You have Google Cyber Cert and you have Security Plus. So many people break into GRC with just that and even less, right? From there, I recommend you continue learning and continue applying to jobs. 2 things I recommend that go really, really well with GRC is, SOC analyst skills and cloud security skills. Now, these are areas on their own. So let's say for SOC analysts, just do something basic. Do like the basic, try hack me SOC 1 or something like Let's Defend, just an introduction. This way, when you apply to jobs, if they want, someone who's a generalist who knows GRC but have a little bit of technical knowledge, you can get that job. But also as a GRC professional, the more technical awareness you have, the more technical knowledge you have, the better off as a GRC professional you will be. Because let's say you're conducting a risk assessment, you're talking to the SOC team, so you can ask them better questions. So that's really the learning plan in a nutshell. I mean, you can go into a lot more details, but with this type of plan, in 8 months or 12 months or 16 months, you should know a lot about GRC, and hopefully you should break into the industry.
Speaking of like courses and certifications, there's always a big debate. Do certifications matter, or is it all about experience? In GRC specifically, where do you fall on that? Should someone prioritize getting the certifications, or should they really focus on the hands-on work experience? What do you think helps land that first job?
Yeah, look, that's a really good debate, and I've had it with so many people, and I've seen both sides of the fence. So some of the best people I know in the industry have no certifications, but also some of the best people I know also have certifications. So it's not a correlation causation thing. For me, certifications, I've always used them. I still use them to give myself a structured way to learn a topic. For example, if I want to learn Amazon AWS Cloud, I could just randomly learn AWS from whatever, or I could follow Amazon AWS certifications. It just gives me a structure to learn. Now, the piece of paper itself, I don't think it's really important, to be honest. I'm more of a, demonstrate the skills. And I think this is where confusion happens. Beginners will look at the job description. The job description will be, we're looking for a SOC analyst. We want the SOC analyst to do all of this. And then at the end, you'll be like, certification, let's say Security Plus. They'll be like, Security Plus is here. If I get it, I'll get the job. Well, it doesn't work that way. The job is asking for so many other things. You leave everything and you hyper-focus on that. Instead, for me, let's say a SOC analyst skills, well, they might be asking for a tool like Splunk. So if you have done hands-on practical labs with Splunk, your resume will have Splunk as a keyword, and you'll have a higher chance of getting the job, but also you'll have a higher chance of answering things in the interview and actually doing well. So to me, practical hands-on are the king, and I think the industry is moving towards that direction a lot more. Especially, even up to 5 or 7 years ago, we didn't have all of these practical platforms that we have today, and therefore things are changing. Now, you said experience will always be king. So if a job is asking for someone with 5 years of experience, you can't, certification your way to 5 years of experience. Experience is experience, right? However, not all experience is created equally. So if you're someone with experience who's also learning in a lab, this way you'll be a much better professional. Now, for beginners, no one starts off with experience. So we always do practical hands-on lab. We chase projects because this can compensate for the initial experience requirement. And, landing that first job will always be hard, but this is how we get it. Like, we have no other way. You must do certifications in the beginning to give yourself the best chance of landing a job.
Absolutely. One thing I want to talk about while we're talking about career progression and stuff like that is one thing I think people want to know before jumping into any job in the field is, where can this actually take me? So for GRC, what does the career ladder look like? Where do most people realistically start? And if they stick with it, how far can they go with this career path?
Yeah, look, really, really good question, especially that, in cybersecurity, we don't really have, structure. Like, someone can start off, let's say, as a SOC analyst, and, they can be a SOC analyst for life, and that's perfectly fine. Maybe they can be a senior SOC analyst, etc., etc. Now with GRC, like I said, it's a little bit more disorganized as it stands because so many roles and so many titles. But if I was to summarize it, you can think of GRC as, 2 separate things. Let's say, for example, the first thing is you work somewhere like a bank or a healthcare organization. You can start as a GRC analyst or risk analyst or compliance analyst level 1, and then perhaps you can be more experienced, so you can have a title of senior. Then maybe you can be a manager and manage a team. Now, this to me is the quickest way to, going really high level, like having a C-level job, like a chief information officer or chief information security officer. This is the pathway. It will take years of experience, and you actually need to be good. So you need to be a good communicator. You need to know your stuff. So that's a really good pathway for you. Pathway number 2, which is what I do, is consulting. So you start as a junior consultant, then big 4 companies, let's say Deloitte, PwC, etc., etc. Then you become a manager, senior manager, director, and then partner. And again, that's a really, really great job if you're someone who likes to help multiple organizations at the same time. So different pathways to different people, but those are two valid points. If someone wants to move to management, let's say someone is a network security engineer or a SOC analyst. If you want to move to management, you could become a manager of a SOC, but believe it or not, adding GRC skills will do wonders to you. You can, it will open more doors, but you can also manage more than just the technology that you know. So it's a great pathway to management, but also, just like any other cybersecurity job, let's say you're just someone who want to do compliance analysis. That's fine. You can just do that for the rest of your life. Or you're just someone who want to be a penetration tester or a network admin. That's also perfectly fine. So, different paths. Not everyone wants to progress, but if you do, there is a lot of upward mobility.
With people working through this career field, I'm sure you see a lot of people make the same mistakes over and over again when trying to break into GRC. What are some of these pitfalls? Maybe things that are either a waste of time or give the wrong impression when someone's trying to land their first GRC role. What are your recommendations for things to try to stay clear of?
Yeah, look, there is so many. I mean, how much time do you want? But I can start going through them quickly. And look, some of my answers, some people may not like, and that's okay for them. But if you want to land cybersecurity job, and this is what worked for the many hundreds of people who follow my advice on my channel, I guess the first thing they do is they go and do things like, A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, CCNA, and they want to work in GRC. So these certs, A, will going to cost you a lot of money, going to take a lot of time, but B, has nothing to do with GRC. I'm sorry, it doesn't, even if Security Plus tells you, risk management is important, great. You still can't do risk management, right? It's not training. So I think that's mistake number one. Mistake number two is platforms, I guess, like Udemy, Cybery, like these, platforms that are always on special, they will give you 20, 100, 200 GRC training that none of them are actually GRC. It's just some slides and just random crap. So again, someone comes to me, well, I've been applying to jobs for the last year and nothing happened. And I look and I'm like, what have you been doing? You still don't know anything. You actually don't know anything. And let's say hypothetically someone invites you to an interview. You don't know anything. You can't actually answer the basic questions. So like I said, just doing random stuff. So if you want GRC, follow the roadmap that I actually shared. This is one. I think two is, and that's not just specifically to GRC. I think cybersecurity in general is happens a lot on Discord. There's someone will be like, well, I followed my recommendations, and they said they followed my recommendation. They're applying to job for the last 3 months and they got no interview, and they feel this hard. They're like, okay, show me your resume. And I see that they've done, Google Cyber Cert, CompTIA Security Plus, full stop. Okay, so you've done 2 very, very basic certifications and you expect to land the job. That is not what I recommend. Yes, I recommend these 2 certs, but that is not a plan. The plan is you continue to study, you continue to upskill until you land the job. So don't just do one training, one cert, and just be disappointed that this, 6-figure job didn't fall into your lap. No, you just continue to study, continue to learn, and continue to apply to jobs. You will be rejected. You will go in interviews and not get the job. That's just part of the process. Accept that.
Yep.
And do that. And, we all had to work part-time jobs. Like I worked as a receptionist in a gym and while I was studying. That's perfectly normal. We all had to do it. And it might take some time. Now, some people, they will land a job without any, it happened. I have people who just applied to a job and got it. Some people with one entry-level cert. It actually happens a lot. It actually happens more frequently than you know. But the danger is some people see that and it becomes their expectation. You'll be like, well, how come they're landing a job and I can't? And then they start making up narratives. They'll be like, well, my country is special. Things in my country are hard. They're special. I'm like, many people from your country have landed a job. Or they'll be, or they'll say things like, my circumstance is just so special. Someone was telling me, well, I have an experience as a, I don't know, what was it, Scrum Master or Project Master, one of those. He's telling me that his past experience is what's, standing in his way. I'm like, it actually, if anything, it's an asset. He's complaining, no, I'm a project manager. I need a special pathway. I'm like, no, you don't. You actually need to learn. And that's what many people don't want to hear is, you actually need to sit down and learn. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. But that's why you get paid well when you land the job.
As we land the plane here, one of the questions I always love to ask, if you had to start over today, knowing everything you know now, what is one thing that you would do differently to stand out, get noticed in this space, and, maybe land a job that much easier?
Oh man, like if I had to start over today, like I'll feel really, really lucky just because of the abundance of information and the abundance of training courses. I never had any of that. We had to really fight to get information over internet forums, and the hacking scene at the time was, it's not good to ask questions. Like if you ask questions on forum, people will make fun of you. You'll be kicked, and go read the manuals. It was really, really hard to learn. So I feel like if I start today, it's like I'm in Disneyland. Like I can learn anything, I want to learn some obscure, Android digital forensic. You can learn it. It's there. It's available. You have some of the best instructors in the world. Like I said, GRC Mastery, I summarize my entire experience of 20 years and consulting into a digestible format that wasn't available to me, right? So if I want to start over today, number one, I'm not going to listen to people. So if I decide to do, if I want to learn, I'll spend 99% of my time in the labs, in the books, in the training, in the learning. Like have something, like spend 6 to 18 months, have something to show for first. My next thing is I'm not going to wait to apply for jobs. I think I waited too long. I was so scared of rejection. So what I will do now, as soon as I start learning, I will quickly start applying to jobs and, let them reject you. Don't reject yourself. So if they're going to reject me, good for them. But if I get an ask for an interview, that's a win. Even if I don't get the job, I get experience in an interview setting. I get to answer questions. And, if you're someone who's good, like what I will do is I will show them that, I'm new to this, but I'm willing to learn. And you'd be surprised how many people landed jobs just by using this line. So, these are the things that I will do. And yeah, I think I took away so much time. Like I wasted time, not wasted, but I spent time on many, many technologies that I thought were foundation, turned out to be, not true. So yeah, that's really what I would do. And I think I'll feel very lucky if I was to start over today.
That's so awesome. And, you've given us so much great advice in this one episode. If people want to find you online, you mentioned you have a course, GRC Mastery, and a YouTube channel. Where can people go find you? Where can they learn more? Is there places that people can connect with you?
100%. Like, thank you so much for having me. Like I said, if you want to find me, just go to YouTube, type Unix Guy, you will find me. On LinkedIn, Abed Hamdan, grcmastery.com if you want to learn GRC. And yeah, I think that's really about it. You'll find me everywhere.
Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time to share so much information with us. I really appreciate it. You coming on the show once again.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Guys, if you are at all interested in GRC, if this video has sparked something in you, definitely go check out this next video here where I go deep into, all the tools and resources you need to be able to be successful and land a job in GRC. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until next time, keep learning.